I'm Dr. Stephen Andrew Missick. I'm running for Texas State Legislature HD 18. And there are many issues that we face here in this House District, which covers San Jacinto, Liberty, East Montgomery, and Hardin County. And I care about people. I want to be a servant of the people. But the biggest issue we face right now is Colony Ridge. And the question is, what is Colony Ridge? And I have to say that this has been going on for a long time. It's horror. It is a horror. It is horrible what John and Trey Harris have been able to do. This is basically what happened. Trey and John Harris came into here, this area, and they're buying up land to make a settlement, a shanty town, a colonia, to cater to illegal aliens. And there's reliable reports that cartels are involved in this and have established themselves there. And people are being exploited, and the environment is being damaged by not building in accordance to code and substandard drainage systems. A great or awful, large, it's great and then it's big, flood zone has been created. And the thing is, what is all this about? What is this about? Corruption. Corruption. And all of this, not according to me, but according to Attorney General Ken Paxton, was allowed to happen. This problem was allowed to fester. It was protected and it was enabled by State Representative Ernest Bales. Children, young people, 15-year-old, their bodies, bullet-riddled bodies, been found there. There's stories of girls being sex trafficked. And it's amazing. It's amazing to see something like that. It's like, how could this happen? Now, the federal government is involved, and there is legal action being taken so far in the courts. It might move beyond that. So how could this happen? Corruption. Corruption. You know, one thing that you need to realize about, yes, Ernest Bales enabled and empowered Colony Ridge. How did he do it? He bestowed privileges upon them through some legislation which he surreptitiously and dishonestly, secretly passed, called HB 4341. But there are many levels of corruption to show that this area is rife with corruption. This is supposed to be the United States of America. This is Texas, the greatest nation and state on earth. And we're allowing, this level of corruption is unacceptable. It's unacceptable. And sadly, Ernest Bales couldn't have done it all by himself. Yes, he played a big role, probably the largest role and the most significant role. But this area is rife with corruption. We deserve better. People need to be held accountable. Someone's got to stand up for the people and root out the corruption. You know, if there's a little corruption here and there, there's probably nothing you can do to totally stop it. But this level of corruption is just shocking. Shocking. The level of betrayal that this man is allowing people to be defrauded and taken advantage of, exploited. We have 75,000 mostly illegal aliens settled in Colony Ridge, Terrenos Houston right now. And Ernest Bales, I was at a debate when I ran against him before, and he boasts about it. He boasts about the population growth to his friends in the teachers' unions because he's excited about building them new schools. So all this man cares about, apparently, is money and self-aggrandizement. We need someone who puts principles first. What I want to look at is a story from the New York Post. And it's unfortunate. Like I said, I learned a lot from campaigning last time. I hope that this time I take my wisdom and my experience that I gained and win. But one of the things I did was I started campaigning on the Colony Ridge Terrenos Houston issue near the end of the campaign. I didn't start off with that. Maybe I was a little bit naive. But then I realized that this is an important issue. I need to campaign on it. So I did campaign against Ernest Bales and on the Colony Ridge issue. I knew, this is before Ken Paxton came out, because this only came out, well, we'll get to that, September 15th and then a month later. But I had heard Ernest Bales say that I was in a meeting, a ministerial alliance meeting with other pastors. And Ernest Bales says, well, I know that you've heard a lot of things about Colony Ridge, or actually we're calling it Plum Grove at that time. I don't want you to worry about it anymore. I'm going to make it legal. I didn't know what he did or how he did it. And I was concerned about that. I was like, well, if I win, I have to go over there and find out what this guy did. He did something, but Ken Paxton, thank God for Attorney General Ken Paxton, he got to the bottom of it. And when I'm elected, the first thing we need, well, I can't wait. Once I'm elected, if I win in March 5th, I'm the de facto new state rep. Ernest Bales is in office until the new state legislature takes over in January. But he will be a lame duck, and I will be the de facto, and I will be the legislator-elect. And I'm going to get busy tearing down Colony Ridge, getting rid of it as much as I can. So we have been, banging the drums, sounding the trumpet on Colony Ridge for years. Like I mentioned before, that was probably 2017, or it must have been 2017 when Ernest Bales came and said that to the Ministerial Alliance meeting. And I'd heard about what's going on there at least a couple of years, if not probably 3 years before then. Complaints, concerns, people seeing cartel activity, people seeing the shanty towns, the exploitation of illegal aliens, the growth in population. So that was going on. And so I started campaigning on this issue. Too late, unfortunately. In 2022, I started campaigning on this issue. But you just realize it's kind of unfortunate. It's like no one's paying attention to us. No one, why can't we get this story out about what's going on in Colony Ridge? And I remember after I came home, I watched a Christian film, which I recommend. It's about George Foreman. He's a Houston hero. It's called Big George Foreman. I thought it was a good film. So I came back to the church, and that very night, there's a man probably connected to, this is in Trails End, but I'm sure this is involved with the Colony Ridge surge of population that brought this man here. And he's obviously a cartel man, and he was killing men, women, and children, execution style, and just running amok for over a week. And then Todd Bensman wrote an article about that, and it didn't get much traction. We didn't get traction on the story until the Daily Wire covered it. And then finally, we had Ben Shapiro, and then others started putting out information. I think the man's name that dealt with it through Daily Wire is Lindquist. And of course, Wayne Del Trifino, years ago, Dwayne Del Trifino was dealing with this issue. God bless him. But it's just Wayne Del Trifino, and it was like just people who were affected by that were sharing the great work Wayne Del Trifino did, but no one else seemed to be interested in the story for whatever reason. But once the Daily Wire took it now, Wayne Del Trifino, Todd Bensman, Mr. Lindquist, and others are starting to get attention. And one of the newspapers or news outlets that covered Colony Ridge is a New York Post, and this is it's founded by Alexander Hamilton. This is an old, distinguished newspaper. It is a conservative outlet. I'm conservative, so I think it's a good source. Let's look at what they reported on this. This is by Dana Kennedy. It says, Feds sue development of Colony or Colonia north of Houston, accused of being a haven for illegal aliens. Listen to this. The walls may be closing in on Colony Ridge, the controversial, quote, Colonia north of Houston, Texas, that has been labeled a magnet for crime and illegal immigration. So if the walls are closing in on Trey and John Harris, the walls are closing in on Ernest Bales. He's involved in this, what the federal government is saying is a fraud. When we look at this story, we're going to see that the investigation of this has been going on for some time. They got the goods, and this could be an expanding investigation. So the issue is that people at this election need to realize on March 4th that Ernest Bales may be arrested. It's possible. It's in the realm of possibility now this is going on. Because him passing that legislation, that's just a small part of what has been going on and how he's been involved in this. His family's involved, his cousins. It's a bad deal. The money going back and forth. We're going to see the agencies being involved. We don't want a state rep who is involved in fraud. Number one. Number two, let's save ourselves the embarrassment, folks. Let's save ourselves the embarrassment of a sitting member of the legislature being arrested. He could be arrested in 2024. But if that happens, isn't it better to have him voted out and then be arrested when the state legislature is out of session? It might not happen, granted, but it is a real possibility. Can you imagine? And then we won't have representation in that seat while this man is arrested. It could happen. And voters need to be cognizant of that fact. And so Ernest Bales should be voted out of office, number one, because he's involved deeply in this fraud. And number two, he might not finish his term in office. Do we want that? Do we want a state rep to elect a state rep who could potentially be arrested before he finishes this term or starts his next if, God forbid, he's reelected? I feel in my heart, I can feel it, that Ernest Bales is going down. Now, two federal agencies, according to New York Post, the Justice Department and the Consumer Finance Fraud Protection, have filed a lawsuit against the companies behind the 400 square mile sprawl of homes, trailers, and even tents, which is home to as many as 75,000 people in an area at least 50% bigger than Manhattan. These agencies accuse the companies, all ultimately owned by multimillionaire brothers John and William Trey Harris, of predatory lending and misleading advertising. The Harris brothers offer mortgages without Social Security numbers and told Texas Monthly that they believe the majority of Colony Ridge's population is undocumented immigrants from Latin America. And I want to mention another outrage, an outrage. The Houston Chronicle said Colony Ridge is a nothing burger and that it's just a conspiracy theory from right-wing fanatics. You know, I have a friend, somebody's involved in exposing Colony Ridge. It says, please don't make this a Republican versus Democrat issue. And it's like, well, I'm not. This is rule of law and what's good and what's right and what's wrong issue. But the liberal media establishment, they did make this a D versus R issue. And they thought since conservatives are opposed to what's going on in Colony Ridge, we are going to support and protect it. It's an outrage what the liberal media did, especially since I'm strong on border policy. I want the border secured. I support immigration law enforcement. So I'm not condoning illegal aliens coming over here. I don't believe in a sanctuary city or zone like Ernest Bales created. But these are human beings made in the image of God, people that Jesus died for, and they're being exploited by Ernest Bales, Trey Harris, and John Harris. And that's unacceptable to treat human beings like this. It's an outrage. And it's even worse that these journalists, these left-wing Democrat journalists who claim to be bleeding heart liberals, would allow that outrage, not just in environmental destruction, but in exploitation of people, to occur. And the Post is told other federal and state agencies are also investigating the development. This includes the IRS. Whoa. They're going to be looking into the donations that Ernest Bales has been getting. Hope you file those correctly. And we're hoping they're not illicit or illegal, at least for him. The Environmental Protection Agency, which, I'm not I'm skeptical about global warming environmentalism, but this is not about environmentalism. This is about the devastation of our environment in creating this flood zone that is not natural. This is created, man-made disaster of Colony Ridge. There might be environmental extremists, but there's legitimate purposes of the Environmental Protection Agency, and one of the legitimate purposes of the EPA is to protect our state and nation from something like that, like Colony Ridge, which is devastating the environment. Also, as I mentioned, the Post is told other federal and state agencies are investigating the development, including the IRS, the Environmental Protection Agency, the Army Corps of Engineers, the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality. That's TCEQ. That's our state EPA, basically. What John and Trey Harris have done needs to be fixed. And the Army, or it might be so bad, maybe the Army Corps of Engineers might have to go in there and repair the environmental damage. But if that happens, we need to make sure that John and Trey Harris pay for the damage they did. And if I'm state legislature, my goal will be to impoverish John and Trey Harris. When we get through with them, they're not going to be multimillionaires anymore. I want to make sure John and Trey Harris are penniless. And I want those people incarcerated for as many years as possible. Think about how vile, wicked, and evil Ernest Bales and John and Trey Harris are. You know, I've been robbed. This church has been robbed and vandalized. We have a Jewish Christian congregation. My background, Southern Baptist. My beliefs as a Baptist haven't changed, but we have this messianic bent of the church. We observe the Jewish feast days. So someone came here, and we also have a multiracial church. We got blacks and Hispanics and all nationalities represented in my congregation. So somebody broke into the church, robbed me, took things that didn't have any real value but had sentimental value to me. They did take some things of value. My chaplain video equipment and sound equipment, things I worked and paid for, these people coming in here. And if that's not bad enough to be robbed, and I'm not rich, they robbed me, and then they put like anti-Semitic and racial derogatory statements about blacks and graffiti all over the church. It's an outrage what they did to me. It infuriated me. I mean, the racist and anti-Semitic graffiti was as bad the way I felt about it, or if not worse than being robbed. It's wrong to rob somebody. But to rob desperately poor people, you can't get much worse than that. This is scum of the earth. You see somebody's desperately poor, doesn't have nothing, and you rob them of the little they have, the way John Trey Harris did, and you enrich yourself. You make tens of millions of dollars by robbing poor people who have nothing. How could anybody want to be seen in the presence of subhuman filth like the Trey Harris and John Harris, the Harris brothers, and Ernest Bales for participating in this outrage? It's disgusting. Oh, let's get a picture with good old Ernest Bales getting rich off of robbing poor people. These agencies accuse the companies, all ultimately owned by multimillionaire brothers John and Trey Harris, of predatory lending and misleading advertising. The Harris brothers offer mortgages without Social Security numbers and told Texas Monthly they believe the majority of Colony Ridge's population is undocumented immigrants from Latin America. That's one of the things I want to do. This ITIN scam where you don't do credit checks and you just let, it's all an exploitation scheme to take advantage of these vulnerable people. It's got to end. So, number one, once it becomes state rep, we have to repeal that legislation, but you have to wait for the legislature, the House of Representatives here in Texas to be in session. So there's a process to repealing HB 4341. But there's a couple of things we can do immediately. Number one, we're going to fix the flood zone they created, repair the damage, and make them pay for it. Number two, the ITIN scam, it's going to be over. We're going to make that illegal I'm going to do everything in my power to make that sure that stops. Once I win this election on March 5th, they need to stop doing that ITN thing and suddenly people in there. It's going to stop. We're going to put a freeze on Colony Ridge. If they don't, John and Trey Harris are going to be digging themselves deeper and deeper into a hole, because I'm going to make them pay for every single person who died in Colony Ridge, every single girl who is sexually trafficked in Colony Ridge is coming out of them. How could our elected officials let this happen? I guess this has been going on really bad since 2017, but it was going on for about 10 years now. What an outrage. So these federal organizations are going after them. So Ernest Bales is in a world of trouble. What I want to do to conclude this video is we're going to look at, to explain this a little bit better to you, we're going to look at a short video reporting from the New York Post. We need to deal with this issue. This is the most important issue in HD 18. I'm a conservative Republican. I'm a MAGA Trump supporter. That's where I stand. I'm a veteran. I'm a disabled veteran. I have service-related injuries. I'm always in pain, but that's okay. I love my country. I paid for my service through injuring my body. That's fine, because I want to pour everything out for my country because I love the United States. I'm not angry, upset that I have pain from service-related injuries. That's okay. It's just who I am. I can deal with the pain. I feel it's an honor that I was able to serve for my country, and it's an honor that I hurt for my country every day to remind myself that that's how far I'm willing to go for my country, and I'm not ashamed of it, and I'm proud, and I'm willing to hurt and deal with discomfort for military service. It's my honor to be a disabled vet, the way I look at it. What concerns me, though, is about disabled veterans. I've worked with soldiers that are disfigured or lost arms and legs, and I hurt. Maybe I got psychological toil of war, but we have Veterans Day. But I really think we need to have a Wounded Warriors Day to appreciate. I mean, people who are physically disabled from the military are a lot more than me. I've seen people with horrific injuries ministering to them as a chaplain. So we need to remember our vets. We remember those who died to protect this country, to keep it free. But we also need to remember those who have physical injuries and were disfigured through military service, and honor their sacrifice. So I am a conservative Republican, and that's where I stand. But we also need to deal with this issue. And I know this is a big district, and it doesn't affect people in Hardin County yet, but in a way it does. Do we want to have a House district where the majority of the population isn't here legal, and where you have a huge section which could be, end up being 20-30% that's under Mexican drug cartel control? Is that what we want? That's what Ernest Bales wants for us. That's what he made happen. So what do we do about this? We need to vote Ernest Bales out. There's me, there's Janice Holt, so you have options. And I live in the area, so this is something I dealt with and can deal with directly. This isn't something far off, like with Janice Holt, Colony Ridge, Terrenos Houston, something over an hour and a half drive from where she lives. But this is something I've been dealing with, I've been following, and I've been confronting for several years now. And we have to get Ernest Bales out of office. And then we have to break up Colony Ridge. And we need to make this an object lesson. We have to go after them so heavy that people, because this is a scheme. People are following the Trey Harris, John Harris scheme, and they're trying to pop up Colony Ridge, Terrenos Houston, or whatever you want to call it, all over the state, all over the country. And we need to put an end to this now. This is where the battle line is, and we need to make these people suffer the consequences. So they become an object lesson and a byword to let people know that you don't want to end up like the Harris boys. So we have to go after these guys hard. And I said this in another video. We have this slogan: don't mess with Texas. These guys have messed with Texas. I'm going to tell you, Ernest Bales Trey and John Harris, you messed with Texas, and now Texas is coming after you to make a mess out of you. You're going to pay the price. I'm going to see to it. This is about our citizens. The burden that they've placed on us, they're not only are they exploiting illegal aliens, not only are they exploiting the environment, they're exploiting the people of Liberty and San Jacinto County, and they're trying to have all these, another school bond, another 175 million school bond here, another 175 school bond there. We didn't ask for this. At least have the decency to let the people have a say-so on this. And I've got all these politicians bought off and turned the other way. It's wrong. Vote for me, and we have somebody who's going to stand for the people and fight back. Let people know about Ernest Bales, especially our veterans. If you served, vote for me. I think veterans should support veterans. And we need more people with military, not just military experience, but combat experience. People have been deployed to a war zone, as I have been twice in office. So I'm a fighter. I want to fight against Colony Ridge and save our House District and Liberty and San Jacinto County and try to heal and restore and undo the damage that Ernest Bales, Trey Harris, and John Harris have done. So, my appeal to you is if you don't like what's going on in Colony Ridge, you need to vote. Early voting starts on February 20th. On March 5th, vote Ernest Bales out of office. Save our House District. Save Liberty and San Jacinto County. I've been campaigning, and so many people want to leave because of what Ernest Bales has done to us. And you can see the damage. Just going around Splendora, how things have changed and how things are falling apart. And this is by design. This is what this man, Ernest Bales, has done to us. Hold him accountable. Vote him out of office. March 5th, 2024, Election Day. Let's begin to put an end to the horror and nightmare of Colony Ridge, Terrenos Houston. And you can do that by voting for Missick. I'm here for you. So please let other people know it's time for people to gather together, organize, and fight back at the ballot box. Let's do it. Missick, Dr. Missick, for victory for Liberty and San Jacinto counties. Please vote. Vote for me. Let me fight for you. And thank you very much, and God bless you.
I'm Dana Kennedy. I'm a reporter for The Post. And last week, The Post sent me to Texas to investigate what we heard was maybe the biggest no-go illegal immigrant or undocumented worker sanctuary city in the country. It's a place called Colony Ridge. And if you haven't heard of it, you're not alone because it's really flown under the radar for the last 10 years. But it's a sprawling series of subdivisions. So Colony Ridge was the brainchild of these two multimillionaire developer brothers who figured out 15 years ago they're going to buy up all these wetlands, cut it into lots, and turn it into like the American dream for poor Latinos. And they use very slick advertising and sort of hot models to advertise Colony Ridge. The idea is you don't have to put any money down and you can have your piece of the American dream. So this is Colony Ridge, and that sounds great. But I went there and the reality is a little bit different. And there's a lot of ramshackle shanties, people living in tents. A lot of people I tried to talk to like let their pit bulls out of their chain link fences when I tried to say hello. It's a pretty shady place. And as a result, it's become the epicenter right now of a big fight between the locals, the developers, and the entire Republican legislature. I also spoke to several Latinas who bought property there. They're U.S. citizens, and there's certainly plenty of U.S. citizens that live at Colony Ridge, but they bought there with the American dream in their mind, and they told me that it became a total money pit. Now, the brothers sell Colony Ridge as a really cheap place to get your piece of the American dream. You put down $500, they say. You don't need to go through the bank. It's owner financing. But once people get there, they find all these fees sort of pile up. They're also expected to pay credit card interest rates on their mortgage. So a lot of people wind up walking away, foreclosing. It's a little hard to put the genie back in the bottle when you have a development this size. It's 50% bigger currently than Manhattan, with up to 75,000 people there. And the people that are the most vocal critics say, watch out, this is the future of America. And they remind me that Houston is right down the street. It's the biggest trafficking hub in the country. And Eagle Pass is about 300 miles away. That's the big border crossing right now that they fear that some people are coming from to go to Colony Ridge.